Languages, Lucknow campus.
We are truly delighted to connect with you all online. For this important initiative, today's program promises insightful discussions and practical strategies to enrich our collective teaching and learning experiences.
We request everyone to ensure that their microphones remain muted during the session, and you may use the chat box for any immediate queries or technical assistance.
Let us begin by extending a heartfelt welcome to our guests and dignitaries. We are honored by your presence and to look forward to your valuable contribution throughout the day.
To formally inaugurate the esteemed gathering, it is my honor to the invite a distinguished academician, a visionary leader, and the driving force behind the Amity School of Languages, Professor Dr. Kumkum Ray, Director of Amity School of Languages, to deliver the welcome address.
Professor Dr. Ray is a distinguished academician in the Department of English at Amity University, Uttar Pradesh, Lucknow, specializes in English literature, professional and technical communication. Dr. Ray's scholarly work includes articles and papers published in national and international journals, and she actively participates in conferences and seminars. An accomplished author of 8 books on literary studies, she is dedicated to Indian knowledge systems and the Viksit Bharat campaign. She received the International Excellence Award in 2023 and 2024 for her contributions to poetry and holds the Royal Golden Fellow membership from the Eudoxia Research Center, USA.
Expressing our deepest admiration and gratitude, I now invite our head of department, who is a paragon of excellence, to enlighten us with her words. Please welcome Professor Dr. Kumkum Rena.
Good afternoon. It's so wonderful to see you, Dixit. And we, our students, and all of us were really ignited by your perspective of the topic. And that's why I said, if ma'am has some time, do invite her to speak, because your research and your work was very meaningful, and I'm sure that all our faculty would be looking at the reasons and points that you bring out which have been kept subdued. So welcome and thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. It's a pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your inspiring words and for setting the tone for today's program.
It is now my great pleasure to introduce our esteemed guest speaker for today, Dr. Diksha Sharma.
Dr. Sharma is an assistant professor in the Department of English at Dr. Ambedkar Government PG College, Uncha, Raebareli. She is a passionate scholar whose academic interests include yogic tradition, spiritual literature, cultural studies, and feminist discourse.
She has contributed extensively to the field of research and publications such as Tracing the Trajectory of Yoga, a Cultural Review, and the Cathartic Value of Pop Music, an analysis of Sia Furler's select songs. Her poetic anthology titled The Dreary and the Dreams, The Dreary and the Sublime beautifully merges the introspective verse with spiritual thoughts.
Her research also includes works on Indian feminism, with a notable chapter titled Indian Independence and the Women Question in the book Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. She has published in UGC approved and international journals and remains deeply engaged in spiritual, literary aesthetics, and storytelling traditions.
She holds degrees in BA Honours, MA, MPhil, and PhD, and is recognized for bringing a thoughtful and holistic approach to literature and education.
We are honored to have her with us today as she shares her insights in the address titled Pedagogy of Peace, an Indian Perspective.
Please join me in welcoming Dr. Deeksha Sharma as she shares the profound insights in a talk titled Pedagogy of Peace, an Indian Perspective.
Thank you, Disha. Thank you, Divyanshi, for that wonderful but exaggerated introduction, I believe. But nonetheless, let me try sharing my screen quickly. Is my screen visible? Disha and
Yes,
Divyanshi
ma'am.
can. Okay.
Yes,
So
yes,
I'll
ma'am.
just quickly.
It's visible.
Okay. So, first things first, let me begin with, as usual, gratitude. Gratitude to the organizers, to the convener, Dr. Kumkumre ma'am, who has been such an encouragement all the time that I come here to speak at Amity, to Dr. Bratish, to my cheerleader, Dr. Soumya, who is always eager for me to speak and who's always the one pushing me forward for such lectures. Let me begin by a disclaimer. I know you're all here, esteemed faculties, and I, in terms of information, might not be giving you something new. But what I promise today is that maybe after this lecture, I hope, at least, that that spirit of teaching is revived again, that somehow seems to have gotten rusted because of the routine work that we do. So I hope that's what my lecture does to you. The aim, before I begin, also, I would like to thank my father, Dr. Vivek Sharma, who's always been, who's the one who trained me in yogic sciences and Indian philosophical thought. My mother, I take this moment to thank her, for she's the one who ensured that all the teachings got really implemented in my life. And with gratitude, I would also like to begin with a small prayer of peace. So it goes like this. ॐ द्यौ शान्तिरन्तरिक्षं शान्तिः पृथ्वी शान्तिरापः शान्तिरोषधय शान्तिः वनस्पतयः शान्तिर्विश्वे देवा शान्तिर्ब्रह्म शान्तिः सर्वं शान्तिः शान्तिरेव शान्तिः सा मा शान्तिरेधि ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः Shantehi. May peace radiate there in the whole sky as well as in the vast ethereal space. May peace reign all over this earth in water, in herbs, in trees, in plants, in animals. May peace flow over the whole universe. May peace be in the Supreme Being. And may we all exist with peace within and peace without. With this prayer, let me talk about a little bit about the structure of my lecture. And before I begin that, I would like this to be an interactional session. So I know interaction would be at the end of the lecture. I would like you people to write down what is peace to you, your perspective on peace. And towards the end, we'll come and we'll revisit it and we'll see what has something changed about peace in your mind. So the structure of the lecture is defining peace as the first part of my lecture. Second is what is education for peace, or what we call peace education. Is there a difference between the two? What is the need of the hour? Third, which forms the crux of my lecture, is Indian philosophical perspective. Fourth is application of the model to curriculum and its effect. That's how I have divided my presentation. The aim of this presentation is only to revive the spirit of peace in all of us, of integrating peace with education and by extension in life as a discipline. Speculating the impact of peace pedagogy in enhancing communication skills. Curriculum revision, is that actually needed? So it should come with a question mark there. Self as the center of study in education. These are my aims that I kind of try to bring through this lecture. Inspiration and challenges. Why did I think that this was my motive behind presenting a lecture on this is uh, like Jean-Francois Lyotard rightly said, that we're living in a world where there is a constant war of meta narratives, a world of meta narratives, so to say. And so truth has turned into truths, subjective experiences, information overload. With neoliberalization, we see that even children are consumers, are the biggest consumers of violent images, the use of the way media projects things, the way we in our own society and our own family are all have all post COVID become so aggressive, so go getter. And so, do we really need to stop and think and pause and maybe realize the need of peace in education or education that leads towards peace? So, and it's so difficult to discern fact from fiction today that what is the way out is something that I am probably was looking at, and so I came to this topic. What is peace? So generally, if you look up a dictionary, peace is a state of calm. Some say it's stillness, some say it's stagnation. And I would go through all of these and talk about how can you consider stillness as peace? Can you consider stagnation as peace? A state of extreme happiness is what the dictionary defines it to be. APJ Abdul Kalam linked a nation's prosperity with peace. If you want peace, remove I and me. I have purposefully taken up this quote of APJ Abdul Kalam because this aligns with my understanding of the Indian philosophical system and the integration of the philosophical system into our own curriculum. It's sad and it's disheartening that we as doctors of literature or any subject are in fact studying and reading philosophy, but the way philosophy as a subject has over a period of time deteriorated in terms of its popularity, and also there are no courses being run. At least some interdisciplinary courses should be run in philosophy because philosophy gives you a way to think. So something that I would like to propound through this model of peace pedagogy that I would talk about in a bit. Galtung, who's a very famous, Joan Galtung, is a very famous peace educationist. He says that peace is the absence of physical and structural violence. Structural violence would include violence that we find in society, in workplace, caste discrimination, through gender discrimination, and physical, we all understand. He distinguishes negative peace from positive peace. Negative peace is the relative absence of violence and war. And most of us think that peace is the absence of violence and war. But positive peace is the presence of justice and harmonious relations. Integrative peace, on the other hand, may refer to peace that integrates both social and personal dimensions. Now, come to think of peace and its evolution over a period of time. We as human beings, when we evolved, where does peace figure in? You see, peace does not exist without conflict, war, aggression, and violence. Since I have always talked about the binary opposites, and the opposites always complement each other in Indian philosophical system. So if evolution pushed us to be violent for survival, to be aggressive for survival, it also pushed us towards conflict resolution, and peace. Moving towards peace. Religion is one of the outcomes of this want, this need, this longing to move towards peace. Having said that, there are many critics and scholars who I myself subscribe to at the moment that religion has in itself served as a lot of a cause of violence more than peace. But when you go to the philosophical system of religions, you'll see that none of the religions talk about violence. They all emphasize on peace, be it Christianity, be it Hinduism, be it the Jewish Zoroastrianism, or Islam for that matter of fact, all of them emphasize peace. But since when we institutionalize religion, a whole lot of problems come in, and this very contentious nature of religion, of advocating peace and war at the same time, is something that make the modern scholars sheer clear away from religion and not talk about religion at all. So, but then my question is, can we replace religion? Are we ready for that? And if we are, the basic principles that operate religion also operate whatever the newer system would be. Would that change something? Is my question. I am not going to answer this. This is something for you people to think. This is how the lecture is going to be. It's going to be dialectical. I might not answer a lot of questions, but I would share my questions with you. There are three shades of peace as recognized by scholars like Galtung. First is social peace, and most of Western philosophy, if you look at it, has focused more on social peace. And what does social peace entail? It entails harmony in human relationships, conflict reconciliation, love, friendship, unity, mutual understanding, cooperation, tolerance of difference. And this is something very important I underline. The second aspect or the second shade of peace is inner peace. Inner peace and peace with nature. Is this visible peace with nature, or is the just a second? I think this window is blocking your vision. Right? Is it visible now? Okay,
Ji,
I
yeah.
hope so. Okay, thank you. So, inner peace and peace with nature is something that is predominantly present in the Indian philosophical, in the Eastern philosophical traditions. And since I'm going to talk about Indian philosophical tradition, I underline Indian philosophical tradition. So, I do not mean to say that the answer is only in the Indian philosophical tradition and not in the Western philosophical tradition, but I say that there is a huge predominance or of social peace in the Western philosophical tradition, whereas there is a predominance of inner peace and peace with nature in the Indian philosophical tradition. And what is the need of the hour is my question. I have over a period of time in my short span of life as of now, I've been experiencing this off and on. You give human beings any law, good law, bad law, they'll make ends meet for themselves, and they could make bad out of good also. So can we really do a lot at the level of society? We can work at the external aspect, but just like the Indian philosophy underlines, I also feel that work now needs to be done at the individual level also. If I were an administrator, I would have talked about social peace a lot, but since we are all here teachers, and teachers are not administrators, although we do take responsibilities of administration, but we do not have as much impact as administrators do. But we have this power of inspiring, of inspiration, that I think is the biggest superpower that a teacher could have, or that any human being could have, for that matter of fact. And that inspiration could only work if we have worked on ourselves, on what we call inner peace and peace with nature. So I'll talk about it in a bit about that also. Just quickly, a cursory look at what major scholars talk or say about peace. John Dewey considers peace as a value of global prosperity and harmony. According to him, the aim of peace education is to promote upliftment, prosperity, and harmony in society. Martin Luther King Jr. considered peace education as the education of compromise, agreement, and love. He said that to establish peace, we need to develop the ability to stand firm in our support. Mahatma Gandhi, one of the most famous pioneers of peace in India, understood peace through the experience of non-violence, truth, and harmony. According to him, establishing peace is not the work of a coward, it requires inner strength. Martin Buber considers peace as the education of relationships and cooperation, which is again, a very social understanding of it. According to him, the importance of peace education lies in strengthening relationships, thereby creating a prosperous society. These different definitions reveal various aspects of understanding and applying peace to education or peace education in society. According to Albert Einstein, peace is not merely the absence of war, and I underline this, but the presence of justice, law, order, in short, of government. Government not in the sense of the structure, but the principle. Prayer stated peace education as a mechanism for transformation, and I quickly stand by Freire. I second that. Because transformation has to happen at the individual level to happen at the social level, at the level of society. Betty Reardon defines peace education as an effort to promote development, as an effort to also bring to the center the marginalized, the subalternized. Peace education is an attempt to respond to the issue of conflict and violence on a global, national, local, and personal level. So you see, peace has so many levels to look at: personal, local, national, and global, seeking ways to create a more just and sustainable future for human beings. So, to understand peace, one has to know at least what violence is. And Galtung actually defines violence or distinguishes violence into four types. First is physical violence. We are all quite aware of physical violence. It involves attempts to inflict physical harm on a person or take their own life or somebody's life. This might include war, domestic violence, homicide, and assault. Psychological or emotional violence, which I think we, not just as a nation, as a people living in this century, are a victim to the most, is psychological and emotional violence. It involves attempts to undermine a person's mental or emotional stability. Examples include threat, humiliation, workplace harassment, psychological abuse, and so on and so forth. Structural violence. This involves societal structures and institutions limiting people's rights and opportunities. I have talked about it. Examples include caste systems, discrimination based on caste systems, gender inequality, economic disparities, and educational bias. And fourth, cultural violence. This involves perpetuating violence through culture, religion, norms, or traditions. And one of the main reasons why I'm going back to my Indian philosophical tradition, trying to find ways out of it. I don't say that I can bring the whole culture back. Revival is not possible. But then, whatever is contemporary, whatever could be used today, should be used today, instead of us be turning away from our own culture. So that's a move towards stopping cultural violence. Examples, because we all understand this, and I don't need to say this, but in one line, I would say that there is this lecture that I was going through for one of my papers, and this is by Dr. Lindsay Brand. Yes, she was looking at indigenous ways of looking at pedagogy for peace, and she went into this society called Haudenosaunee Society, and she brought out certain aspects of peace that could be inculcated in education. And why did she do that? Because the whole attempt of decolonizing knowledge is something that is very important, and that is also my aim here. Some international legal interventions advocating peace education is the realization that peace is more than the absence of conflict. This lies at the heart of the emergence of the notion of a culture of peace, a notion which has been gaining greater attention within peace research in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. The notion was implicit within the UNESCO mandate, with the acknowledgement that since wars begin in human minds, it follows that defense against war or peace can only be established in human mind first. And this again, I reiterate because this is something that aligns with my agenda today. An extensive expression of this notion was set forth in the United Nations General Assembly, Resolution 53 to 43, the Declaration and Program of Action on a Culture of Peace. I don't think this is something that you don't know, but just reiterating it. It adopted unanimously on 13 September. It was adopted on 13 September 1999, which describes a culture of peace as a set of values, attitudes, traditions, and modes of behavior and ways of life. Article 1 of the document indicates these are based upon a respect for life, ending of violence, and promotion and practice of non-violence through education, dialogue, and cooperation. Today, we're going to talk about education the most. The right to peace is found in Article 3 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is kind of implied in the right to life. Right to life implies right to peace. Now, the second part of my lecture talks about education for peace. What is education for peace? And should we call it peace education or should we call it education for peace? So I kind of align more with education for peace than peace education. In peace education, peace is a subject in the syllabus, something that is to be read and analyzed. In education for peace, peace becomes the shaping vision of education. It becomes the way one looks at life and education. Currently, the enterprise of education, as we all know, is driven by market forces. And I think everything in this world is kind of at the moment driven by market forces. Education for peace is not antagonistic to the market, but it does not recognize the market as the sole purpose of education, right? The market is only a part of our life world. Education for peace is education for life and not merely training for a livelihood. So I might make this distinction here in the very beginning. I felt that when I nascently came out of my own 12th, that we were never taught, and entered my career, that we were never taught how to live life. Education for peace is that. It teaches us how to live life. Education for peace is thus the ideal strategy for contextualizing and making operative value education. I underline operative value education, not just value education, but functionality of value education is something that needs to be understood. We're all when I go into the pedagogy for peace and talk a little bit about curriculum, you will see that we have already imposed and inculcated into our own education system all those. Is there somebody who wants to ask a question? Okay.
Please.
We've already inculcated a lot of education for peace in our classrooms. But the problem is it functional? Is it really doing anything? And why is it not doing anything? Functionality is directly proportional to intentionality. We as teachers are burdened with new curriculum every once and now, and the aim of that curriculum kind of dissipates in the execution of the curriculum. And this is what I want that should stop. And we as teachers lose value over a period of time because somehow we are just busy finishing courses and taking exams. So, values that are internalized through experience, which is woefully lacking in the classroom centered, exclusively cognitive approach to teaching, the kind of teaching that we are doing at the moment. If we talk about peace, like we are talking about peace here, we're going to talk about peace and not do anything about it, meaning that hands on experience actually is something that is required. Sometimes even if you're not doing a hands on activity, if the teacher, I do emphasize the role of the teacher in this, if the teacher emanates peace, it might transfer onto the student. And this inspiration is the biggest that I feel. Education for peace calls for a liberation of learning from the confines of the classroom and its transformation into a celebration of awareness enlivened with the delight of discovery. Now, what are the problems of today's society and why do we need education for peace? The first and the foremost problem that children are facing is alienation. And I don't think it's a new or recent development, but at the same time, I would emphasize and underline that it's growing by the day because of social media culture that's posting a certain image of happiness to us that we need to subscribe to. And unless we do that, we're not happy. So, alienation, I think, is the seed of violence. In alienation, even silence becomes violence. Now, see how peace, if you equate with silence, it might not always be peace. Silence is not peace. Compromise is not peace. Then what is peace? Even silence becomes violence. It needs to be asked if we are spreading alienation unwittingly or willingly through education by undermining the affective, which is to do with emotions, relational, and experiential aspects of learning. Education of this kind, the cognitive kind only, is turning children into cerebral machines that master facts and are mastered by them. Also, the need to prove your point, to argue yourself over the other, to drive down the point into somebody's mind is something that cerebral mechanism of our teaching is doing to students. The inability to sit with an opposing viewpoint is what I feel the students are being raised with because of this education system, because of even the social structure. But it leaves them deficient in emotional and relational skills. As a result, the more achievement oriented we are becoming as people, if you've not written a paper by the end of this month, we as professors, I think you can relate to this, you publish or perish, right? But the whole point is in that rut or race, so to say, to achieve more things, are we leaving behind something? Are we leaving behind relations? Are we leaving behind emotions? So the reciprocity is ending and alienation is taking uh, the front seat. Alienation thus becomes the seed of violence. Also, the way we deliver our lectures, also the way media posits arguments or debates, also the way we in our families as parents are talking in front of our children. Language plays a big role. I will talk about that in a bit. But faith in violence has become so rampant today. They believe that violence is a quick fix problem solver. It's almost like an epidemic, because if you prove your point, you win. And winning is something that is so prized today in this overproductive culture that we're living in today because of neoliberalism and consumerism. Language and violence. Words like, oh, she's such a good sports person. She has that killer instinct to do it. Oh, that man has achieved that. Oh, he must have done that on a war footing. You see, words like this, words have a very sneaky way of, language is a very sneaky way of getting into our psyche and perpetuating habits. And so we need to look at what kind of language we're using in classrooms also. Are we in any way disturbing, or let's say, uh, focusing on such kind of aggressive language? Oh, let's eradicate that. Why can't we say let's promote peace? Why eradicate war? Why promote peace? So you see, the kind of language, positive and negative, that we use, or aggressive and violent that we are using, has become even more rampant today. Agenda wars in workplaces. We've all felt that. Workplace politics, and everybody has their own agenda and biases. Even after, I have no qualms in accepting it. And I hope, it takes a lot of courage to accept this, that we have all of us here, even after having read so much, having learned so much, I don't think it reflects in our personality yet. Because you see, the point is, we are all governed by our own biases and prejudices, and the whole point of our career, the whole point of our action becomes improving those biases and prejudices, and that's exactly what is intellectual violence. So we as teachers, we as professors should have an open viewpoint about the opposite also. Gender wars in homes, propaganda wars in the public space, specifically media. The result is children grow up unwittingly schooled in violence. But does anybody talk about peace? And if we do talk about peace, we talk so uninterestingly about it that it becomes the most boring subject. I still remember we were taught moral teaching in our school days, but nothing came of it, because what we were doing was we were just reading and doing questions. But can morality be taught by reading stories? I mean, that's something that or value for that matter of fact, be taught like that. So peace likewise becomes an alibi for oppression when delinked from a commitment to justice. Injustice subverts peace. The demands of justice must take precedence, this is very important, over the claims of peace itself. Justice is very important. Peace without justice is compromise. Justice should take the upper hand. And paradoxically, when justice happens, peace itself kind of maintains. The ability and how do we maintain that justice in classrooms is something that we need to think about. The ability to respond justly and affirmatively to the needs and sufferings of others is the hallmark of authentic inner peace, and that needs to be worked at. Education for peace seeks to nurture the knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values that comprise a culture of peace. It is a long term proactive strategy. Undoubtedly, if I say, let's make operational this the whole curriculum for education for peace, nothing's going to happen in 10 days, maybe not even in 50 years, but at least some change would begin. It's about the beginning. It's a long term proactive strategy to nurture peaceful persons who resolve conflicts as much as possible non-violently. Education for peace is holistic. It embraces the physical, emotional, intellectual, and social growth of children within a framework of human values. Aim is to empower individuals to choose the path of peace rather than the path of violence. And see, we've talked about what kinds of violence are there. So just physical violence is not what we're talking about. Sometimes, that's how paradoxical life is. Sometimes war is important for peace. I know I'm saying something that might not sit well with many, but sometimes, Like I said, intentionality is what matters. What you choose, not as your action only, but as your intention. Most of the times we're choosing good actions, but intentions completely missing. So, to enable them to be peacemakers rather than consumers of peace, this is also very important. Oh, let us leave a world of peace for our children, and so that they can consume peace. And maybe after that, there's war. The whole point is that there has to be perpetual, incessant efforts towards making peace, and the students and children, and in fact, even ourselves and the coming generations, all of us have to keep moving, marching towards peace. It's like an ideal, right? But having said that, it doesn't mean it's unachievable. So now coming to the core of my lecture, peace in Indian philosophy. Before I begin, peace is an attitude in Indian philosophy. It is a state of mind in Indian philosophy, which I will do as I go through. This is just a cursory reading of the various schools of Indian philosophy and what each school thought was peace before I delve deep into uh, yogic philosophy, so to say. So we begin with Sankhya philosophy, one of the oldest philosophies in Indian, oldest school of philosophy in Indian tradition or Indian knowledge system. Peace in Sankhya philosophy is freedom from sorrow. This is very important. Liberation as peace, freedom as peace from sorrow. There is a dualistic metaphysics when it comes to Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya does not believe in one idea, but it does believe in the idea of Purush and Prakriti, so that's dualism. Purush being pure consciousness and Prakriti being content of consciousness. Please do not attach gendered ideas here. I am not doing that because we're talking per se of philosophy. Purush means pure consciousness. We all have Purush in us, pure consciousness, and Prakriti is content of consciousness. Now, the problem arises when Purush identifies with Prakriti. You see, if Purush has the ability to remain Purush and Prakriti has the ability to remain Prakriti, then there will be no problem. So when Purush aligns with Prakriti, what happens is creation happens. And later in the Upanishadic period, we can say they talk about how different sheets of human beings or human existence, come out of this creation. We'll talk about it a bit after that. So the problem is when Purush starts identifying as Prakriti, not that it enjoys that's not a problem. The problem is when you think, oh, I am this and this, I am Dr. Diksha Sharma, I am this assistant professor. The problem is this: when I'm only identifying with my career or with my physicality or with my mentality, the problem is this: these are my faculties. You can't deny these faculties. There's no point of denial here. But the problem is that there is something much more than this: the silent observer, the pure consciousness that we as people are unable to kind of tap into. And so it emphasizes the role of Drishta Bhav. Drishta Bhav is the ability to detach oneself from one's mental, physical, and intellectual uh, identity and see things in as they are. So it doesn't mean that you will not be emotional if you start detaching yourself. That's a very, very wrong idea of detachment that some scholars of Indian philosophy have perpetuated. That's a very wrong idea. The idea is that you live, you experience every emotion. There's no denial of that. But in the Drishta Bhav also, you have to kind of keep accessing the Drishta Bhav for peace. Because if you are constantly flowing in the wave of emotions and feelings and intellect, I think peace is not possible. Peace is only possible when you kind of try and retire into Drishta Bhav, which we'll talk about how is it possible through yoga. There are two concepts here of mukti, of freedom or liberation, of Jivan Mukt and Videha Mukt. Videha Mukt is finding liberation after you're dead, I mean, your body dies. And Jivan Mukt is liberation while you're in your body. The sense of Drishta Bhav gives you that those small spaces of let's say liberation. So that's something that's important. Um, some of the older Indian philosophy, this is a claim that's laid by many scholars that Advait philosophy and in fact even Vedic, some of Vedantic philosophy, focuses on how it's life negating. because it stops you from experiencing emotions in different realms or sheets of your personality. But that's what I think over a period of time has changed in yogic philosophy, and so my emphasis on yogic philosophy. Yoga philosophy, if you've read any sutras, there are, I think, 196 sutras, if I'm not wrong. Yes, somewhere around 196 sutras. And if you read Patanjali Yoga Sutra, which is one of the oldest treatises on yoga, it begins with Atha Yoga Anushasanam, and then the first point that they're making is in the second sutra, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. The point of yoga is to stop the incessant circles and cycles, the disturbances in the mind. Stop is the term that I'm using, but obviously, yoga is the only tradition that has seemed to sustain over a period of time and still alive. And there is a reason why it's still alive, because it has changed with time. So today, we, instead of using the term stop control, we use discipline, right? So because the element of balance is there in discipline, but the element of stopping just means stopping, cut short. So this is something is that is the aim of yoga philosophy. Ashtang Yoga, as we all know, which is the classical form of yoga, has 8 parts. Generally, by yoga, we understand, 21st June, and yoga means those different postures. That is a very small portion of yogic philosophy. That's just one part of the Ashtang parts of the philosophy. First is yam, then is niyam. I will discuss this in the next part of the slide. Then asan. Asan is wherein all those exercises come in. Then pranayam, we all know, pratyahar, dharana, dhyan, and samadhi. Samadhi would be considered uh, peace, liberation from a state of equanimity, as yoga defines peace, right? So that is the definition of yoga. Nyaya and Vaisheshik school of philosophy are those schools of philosophy that focus on liberation through knowledge by elimination of ignorance. So whereas yoga philosophy is more of giving you a way. Why do I emphasize on yoga philosophy so much? Because this is the only philosophy that gives us ways to do it. Yam, practice niyam, asan, pranayam. So it's almost given there. We just need to see and contextualize what is relevant for today's society, right? And maybe redefine and reinterpret even. So liberation is possible according to Nyaya and Vaisheshik school of philosophy by elimination of ignorance. And this is something that I recently learned when I was going through Nyaya and Vaisheshik school. This is the greatest school of epistemology and logic. But because we don't read philosophy, but because philosophy is considered, oh, philosophy na jhado wali philosophy, the point is, logic is something that is completely missing in today's society. We need to inculcate the study of philosophy of logic also, so that a student develops apohanam, as we call it, or vivek, the idea of discerning fact from fiction, the idea of discerning, I won't say fact from fiction, but I would say right from wrong. What is right for him, what is wrong for him. I think that is something that is completely lost in today's world. So Nyaya and Vaisheshik school of philosophy could give us that. Mimamsa school of philosophy focuses on liberation. Now, herein we find slowly, you see, the human existence starts getting categorized, where into mind, body, sense organs, and objects of the world. So they say that liberation is only possible if oneself gets emancipated from the bonds of mind, body, sense. And this is where, the whole point of life negation comes in. It is not a state of bliss, but a state. Now, some people say peace is happiness. Mimamsa says no, peace is not happiness. And most of ancient Indian philosophy says peace is liberation, right? But yoga philosophy also talks about how peace is such should give you satchidanand. So there is also anand included in it. We will talk about it, how it kind of comes to that. But a state where the self achieves its real nature. So going back into one's real nature, and it dissociates itself from worldly pain and pleasure. So the idea of remaining undisturbed by pain and pleasure, which later we find in Bhagavad Gita's concept of sthita pragya, yogic concept of sthita pragya, which I'm going to talk about in a bit. So I believe that from Mimamsa today, we can pick and choose kamya karma, which is desired action, selfless action to help other people. Because this is wherein, the idea of dharma and mantras. I began with a shlok, which could turn into mantra, but I did talk about the difference between shlok and mantra in one of my earlier lectures. So the whole point is that at this point of time, dharma was developing, mantras were coming into being, how sound could be used to uh, to even exact that state of peace is something that they're looking at. But from here, if we take kamya karma, if we look at selfless actions to help other people, the idea of toleration that comes with peace education would kind of align with it. Most of Vedant philosophy, again, it looks at the path of knowledge. We call most of Vedant Gyan Yoga, right? Knowledge as liberation. There are certain non-Vedic schools of philosophy also, like Buddhist philosophy. It talks about the middle path, and I think this is very important because when we talk of balance, what is that balance? Although Buddhist philosophy talks about eightfold path, also right action and all of that, but what is right? Right? That is something that is not defined anywhere, that we can only come to through experience. And so, experience, if we go to Nyaya and Vaisheshik school of philosophy, experience is a praman in itself. We can talk about it sometime else because that's not something that is kind of pertaining to my lecture today. So, experience and anubhav becomes very, very important. Buddhist philosophy expostulates the middle path, a balanced approach to life, neither to life negating, neither to life indulging, as opposed to Charvak philosophy, which is too life indulging. It talks about avoiding pain to maximize pleasure, and pleasure is equated with peace. And so, this kind of peace is mostly disturbed as soon as external environment changes. So, Charvak school of philosophy talks about external peace mostly. Jainism talks about non-violence in the most extreme way, we all know. Right faith, right knowledge, and right conduct could lead to a state of peace. But the whole point of all those philosophy is what APJ Abdul Kalam said: cutting short I and me, right? Uh, we, it's not life negating. Identification is life negating. When I identify as somebody, I negate the existence of somebody else. Why can I not be everything? The point is this, if we maintain that distance, the whole point is, that functionality, that balance has to be maintained. If we never understand what a student is feeling or what a student is going through, I don't think we would be good teachers. But if we don't maintain that boundary, I don't think we'd be good teachers. So the whole point is balance, the act of balancing. And that's what is peace, the act of balancing. Mahatma Gandhi's concept I've already talked about, Satyagraha. Jiddu Krishnamurti says that in order to provide for a child's all round growth, instruction should incorporate a variety of activities. Why? Why is variety necessary for peace? Why is diversity necessary for peace? Why is violence so complementary to peace? The point is, the more you are exposed to in terms of experience, in terms of art, in terms of craft, music, dramatics, the more personality, the more you grow, you see. And the point is, then it is more difficult to identify as only as a good poet, only as a good writer, only as a good teacher. The more there are sides to your personality. And sooner or later, maybe through expansion, we reach that position where we can identify or we can establish ourselves as pure consciousness. The whole point is that. So, Jittu Krishnamurti talks about how variety of activities are very important for peace education because that develops various aspects to human experience and reality. Some yogic core values for pedagogy of peace is Sthita Pragya. Sthita Pragya is a concept that comes in the Bhagavad Gita, but Gita itself is now comes under yogic philosophy also. So the whole point is that you be undisturbed by anything that's happening around. Now, it does not mean you don't experience emotions. Again, please, that disclaimer needs to happen. You experience everything to the fullest, but you're undisturbed by it. You see, emotions can be experienced without getting disturbed, right? So those vrittis are very, very, very important. Should kind of minimize. And when you're sthita pragya, obviously you have the ability to juggle between, to balance between opposites. So tolerance and acceptance of difference kind of grows. Development of discernment or vivek is important. Equality of vision or equanimity is important. Conflict resolution is important. Contentment or santosh is important. And this one, I think, is the most important thing to any learner. We are all teachers, but we are eternally learners. And that's the kind of approach I keep in my class also, that's learner oriented, is that abhyas and vairagya. These are two principles that I feel are very important in life. Abhyas is the act of doing something again and again, but vairagya is the act of becoming detached from the fruit of what you've done. Doing something for something. People might say that, oh, what kind of a philosophy is that? But I'm talking about the effect of it on your mind, right? It would not disturb your mind, and so inner peace would flow. That's what I'm talking about. Distress, depression, which is so rampant today, nervousness, labored breathing, distress and depression, Yoga Sutras talk about it, is a symptom of distracted mind, a distracted state of mind. And so concentration exercises that come with yoga could become a part of our curriculum. Patanjali Yoga Sutra 1.33 talks about cultivating friendliness towards those who are happy, compassion for those who are suffering, delight in the virtuous, and neutrality towards those who you perceive to be wicked. And this is exactly what is Sthita Pragya. The mind stuff retains its undisturbed calmness because of that. Now, to talk about the 8 limbs of yoga, yam is are what are called some practices, ahimsa being one of them. Ahimsa is not non-violence, it's kindness. Satya is truthfulness. Aste is non-stealing. And hidden beneath the surface of aste is the idea of non-jealousy, actually. Brahmacharya, hundreds of people have come and gone and have kind of said, oh, it's celibacy. Celibacy could be one form of brahmacharya, but brahmacharya is moderation, moderation of the senses, right? And also the mind, for that matter of fact. Aparigraha is generosity towards others. So if we practice these values, or if we kind of try and inculcate this through our method or pedagogy of teaching, that would come in handy. Niyam is cleanliness, not just of the body, but of the mind. Santosh, contentment, tapas. Now, people who say Indian philosophy takes us into a world of transcendentalism. It doesn't talk about karma, it doesn't talk about action, it doesn't give you that motivation. What is austerity? Austerity is the ability to act and keep acting, um, even if the result's not there, right? That's austerity, tapas. And the energy that comes from that is called tapas, right? Swadhyay is self-study. I think if we have to move towards peace, or anything that has to do with intellectual development, it's high time that we start including subjects or papers that talk about studying the self, because that's something that we are taught in the gymnasium of life, maybe when we experience pain and pleasure, but that doesn't happen in classrooms. Can we make certain situations in classroom that could lead to this? And Ishwar Pranidhan, although people think that Ishwar, traditionally translating, it means one pointed focus in God. But you see, it also means that after doing all these things, you kind of surrender it. If you believe in God, okay. If you don't believe in God, time, your own faith, whatever it is, you kind of surrender the results of the action, right? Then asana are the physical postures. We all know about those exercises. Pranayam, this one small exercise we can all do. As soon as you feel, you know, a little depressed, I'm using the term quite lightly there, or sad, just jump for 10 times. Or if you don't want to do that, just take deep breaths for 20 times. And you will see your mind change. Science today is proving it. It's not that only yoga is saying that. Obviously, yoga said it quite before science even came into existence. But now science is proving it. There's something that's happening in your mind, in your brain. a kind of a rewiring or a kind of a new connection is made, right? So these are very important aspects, so to say. So can we not include 5 minutes of maybe pranayam in our classes? Just breathing. It doesn't need to be very categorical of like Kapal Bhati or Anulom Vilom. It could be easy breathing, just that. The Westerners are taking so much from yoga, mindfulness, meditation, and it's getting reminted and resold to all of us, to you, to me, and we are following it, right? So that's something that's important. Basically, why is our yoga so connected to Ishwar? Because that's in that period of time and today also to many people, that is one center that holds everyone together, one's personality together. But if it's not your belief in Ishwar, then it could be your belief in yourself, right? It could be any kind of belief, but that belief that transcends this logic of what you call um, this logic of, I would say that it could be belief in anything, to be putting it simply. Pratyahar now is very important. It's the withdrawal of the senses, making the mind introspective. This is very important. Half of us, we own the results of actions that are good. Oh, I worked so hard, so I got 95%. But we would rather not own the, and this is something that existentialism also talks about. We would rather not own failing at something. Oh, life did that to me. The bravery that it takes to own happens through introspection, right? So introspection is very, very important. Unless you introspect, you would never realize the difference between the two. Dharana is concentration of the mind. Now, there are many exercises that today we all know of concentration, and now it's getting reminted and sold to us, repackaged and sold to education institutions in different memory maths, this math and that math forms. But that those are just ways of concentrating the mind, because these people recognized experiential recognition that mind does not stay in one place. So it's very important. First, see, he did not, Patanjali did not keep dharana first, right? Or before pranayam or pratyahar. It comes quite later in your exercises when you're ready through all these, I would say, exercises. Dhyan and samadhi are then the resultant state. And samadhi could be called a state of peace. Even dhyan could be called a state of peace, but you come back and forth from dhyan. Samadhi is where you stay for a very long period of time. But there are very many kinds of samadhi. But since we're doing pedagogy of peace, so I'm not going to go into the detail of that. But that's a state of equanimity where you remain undisturbed. Okay. So now coming to my pedagogical model for peace. This is the model that I've drawn up. I hope it's visible. At the center has to be self. At the center has to be an individual. Because I'm not talking about, doing this to just everybody. Just apply this curriculum, this model to everybody. No, first let us do apply this into our lives. So yoga, reflection, introspection, and meditation kind of develop self. Now, as psychology says, there are three aspects to human existence. It says there is cognitive, there is punitive, and there is affective. Cognitive has to do with intellect and brain, and affective has to do with emotions, and cognitive has to do with behavior. So here, in this or pedagogical model for peace, I do talk about cognitive and affective, and I think after dealing with cognitive and affective, cognitive changes of itself. It's the outwardly behavior that we do. So first, let's think about these 3 points that I'm making: creative thinking, dialectical thinking, and critical thinking. These form the part of cognitive aspect of human existence. Now, creative thinking that we should include seek novel solutions and answers. This, I think, is completely missing in our classrooms. We are never ready to listen to an answer that may be different but correct. Dialectical thinking is, again, the ability to digest, to be able to speak from both sides or from more than one point of views about a topic, being able to construct an argument from either point of view. And if we practice those, um, I just talked about those values of yoga, I think this comes in quite easy because there is a lot of toleration in you. Critical thinking, the ability to distinguish between fact, opinion, belief, recognize bias and prejudice. And I think we're all prejudiced some ways. And the point is that to recognize that this is where I'm working from prejudice and this is where I'm working, outside of prejudice, this recognition has to happen. This is not happening. Today, what we think of bias is we say, no, it's right. It's my truth. We can't be minting our own truths on the basis of our own prejudices and biases. This is something that we need to talk about. So, study of logic, fallacies, philosophy of logic, Western is also quite rich here, and Nyaya and Vaisheshik school of philosophy, I think, could add in. Next is emotional intelligence. Like Jiddu Krishnamurti said, I think the best way to develop emotional intelligence is creating atmosphere for dialogue between students that have varied experiences, and it's good to have variety in class. And dialogues, again, then you have to monitor the dialogues that it doesn't get aggressive. But when you develop in the student the ability to patiently listen to the other point of view, that is something that can lead to emotional intelligence, to understanding of one's own emotions and to understanding of somebody else's emotions. And this is all connected to yoga, mind you. How? Because yoga, then when you are practicing yoga, you understand your emotions quite easily. And when you do that in that drishta bhav, and when you understand your emotions, you kind of understand other person's emotions. So this emotional intelligence needs to be um, inculcated in our students, which is completely missing today. Arts like music, painting, writing, dancing, and even movies that show different perspectives, different ideologies should be shown in classrooms and should be propagated. If anybody here is an artist in some sense or the other, abhyas vairagya is something that forms the very um, crux of it. You keep practicing and you be detached from what is happening after that. You keep practicing and you keep doing and you keep doing. So instead of, people saying that, oh, it's not work oriented, it's quite work oriented, our Indian philosophical system and the model that we derive from it. Physical intelligence then would entail obviously physical training, but I underline here defense training. You see, strength, I have not mentioned it here, but Dr. Lindsay Brand talks about how in the Hodenson's great laws of peace, strength is very important. So strength of the mind could be cultivated through emotional and intellectual training, but strength of the body is equally important. The student should know what is the difference between war and defense. That is very important. Today, I think we loosely use the term war. If we know what's the difference between war and defense, we know what's the difference between violence and peace. Next, we talk about ecological intelligence and inculcation of a relationship with nature. How am I kind of connecting it with yoga? I will just quickly tell you there is something called para and apara prakriti in yoga. So your internal nature, your mind, body, your intellect, your senses are a part, very much a part of nature. So your body is just an extension of the external world outside, or you can say it like this: that the external world is just an extension of your body. So there is an irrepressible connection between internal nature and outside nature, and so the students should be inculcated with values that engender relationship, positive relationship with nature. Now, what is the role of teacher? And with this, I'm coming almost to the end of my class. I hope nobody is asleep. That teachers, teachers can be social healers. We can lead by example. But I would cut in and also acknowledge the fact that teachers are the most burdened at the moment. For such creative, classroom settings to happen, we can't be just on our toes and finishing curriculum and doing the routine work that we do. We think, and I think, assessment needs to change. Examination forms and everything that needs to change completely. Because what is tested in your interview, in your employability, now I'm coming to that, is not what you've achieved only, right, in terms of your education, in terms of the curriculum, but what you emanate also in terms of your character. And that's completely, I think, missing. So teachers can be social healers. I think first we as teachers should kind of practice yoga, should practice each one of us in whatever little sense we can. And yoga meaning balance. um, and because I feel the greatest kind of inspiration, this is something that also I was reading a text, I don't completely remember Indian text again, about how there are different types of gurus, and the greatest kind of guru is that communicates without speaking. And I think communication without speaking is possible only through inspiration, and inspiration can only communicate if there is something within that has changed. So we as teachers need to change. We're seeing the quality of teachers degrading over a period of time, not just because education system is failing, also because survival. That's also something we can't really do away with that. But can we reach a middle ground? Maybe, maybe. Intellectual violence is the worst kind of violence, I believe. Don't tell students what to think. Engender in them the idea how to think, and also the idea that there is no one way to think but many ways to think. Peace skills in students, once our education becomes peace oriented, would promote academic excellence also, because we are also practicing anushasan or discipline. Also with that, communication skills would increase. Why? Because you have toleration, you have the capacity to listen, a sense of higher purpose. How many of us have the capacity to listen? Let's be very frank. I mean, I'd be very frank. Very few can listen for. I've been speaking for an hour almost, and I think even I'm losing uh, patience now. So probably you must have already lost it by now. So the capacity to listen, a sense of higher purpose that, if I listen to the other person, I might be able to understand what he or she is going through. And maybe we can work out a middle ground. Patience and endurance, the willingness to seek out answers. We, I feel 8 out of 10 of us are all, you know, problem mongers. We are only looking at problems. And it's good. That's a part of critical thinking. But where is creative thinking? What can be the solution? There's never going to be a perfect solution. Like there's never a perfect problem, right? If there was a perfect problem, there would be a perfect solution. But since there is not a perfect problem, there cannot be a perfect solution. But how many of us are actually a part of the solution? And that's something that, I think is very important to be inculcated in our curriculum. And so that increases patience, endurance, the willingness to seek out answers, to reach a middle ground, to resolve, and a positive attitude towards study and work. And that also increases our creativity. Let me say that, our creative thinking. Presentation is also enhanced because you're able to clearly think and coherently explain ideas. When you're not disturbed in your mind 24/7, you can probably, even express better, articulate better. Active listening could be enhanced through this pedagogy. Listen, students could listen carefully, understand, acknowledge the views of the others. So the idea of tolerance of difference comes in. Negotiation, non-verbal communication. The more peaceful you are, the more observant you are, because you're in that drishtabhav, mind you. So the more observant you are, you can recognize that certain body languages mean certain things. And that way is also you can communicate better, since communication is not just verbal, it's also non-verbal. Also self-discipline is the most important thing, and I think our whole lives, if we are a little dedicated to our lives, our whole lives are an experiment in self-disciplining. At least I feel that ways, so discipline, if introduced as a part of the curriculum, I think effectively management of time would become a part of students' life. Cooperation, responsibility, respect, these would become the core values of students' life rather than arguing or driving your point or winning or achieving. Achieving is important. I'm not saying don't achieve. I'm saying the mindset behind achievement should not be that of war footing, of a warfare. Peacefully, also things can be achieved. It may take time, but they can. So let me end this with a shlok from the Bhagavad Gita. I'll explain why I'm ending this with this shlok, because there is a personal vested interest in this shlok. It says, Shraddhavan labhite jnanam tat parah satyendriya, jnanam labdva param shanti, shantim chiren adhigachati. The whole point is now it describes what peace is. It describes the Shraddhavan. My father is a great scholar of Bhagavad Gita, a commentator on Bhagavad Gita, and he always corrects me when I say Shraddha means faith. He says, no, it's not faith. Shraddha is forward moving energy, which means it could be motivation, it could be that intense drive to do something. So motivation, lavate jnanam tatpara. Motivation takes you to jnana through experiences. That's what it's saying. So motivation to do something. So action is very, very imperative. Takes you to experience and experience to gyan. And when you reach real gyan through Sayatendriya, matlab through disciplining of the faculties of human senses, then you reach jnanam, labdva param shantim. Eternal peace through knowledge could be reached that ways. Now, what do I mean by knowledge? And is this just a one directional process? No, it keeps happening. Every time that we are driven to do something, for example, I was driven by uh, Soumya to give this lecture. We have a certain motivation. We reach a certain state of, experience. We learn. Obviously, in the interaction session, I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot from you people, and then a knowledge comes to us. Knowledge that emanates peace. This kind of knowledge is what I want to be emanating through students in our curriculum. Knowledge that gives us peace. So yes, with this is a list of references. I thank you all for very patiently listening to me for so long. And I would now, ask you people also to kind of pitch in your ideas of how you can create an atmosphere of peace education in your classrooms. So yes, with this I end my lecture. Thank you.
It's a wonderful session, and I think the pedagogy is a sort of a way of life. If this pedagogy is followed with the way of life,
Yes, ma'am.
it will be very, very profitable for not only employability but for the self. So this
Yes.
was a wonderful session because it brings you to your inner self, and the spiritualism which joins you to figure a more, what quantum physics says, the consciousness to
Thank you,
achieve
ma'am.
it so much. It's a wonderful thing.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so
Sadopus.
much, ma'am, for that illuminative presentation. We now open the platform for questions. Participants may use the raise hand feature or type their questions in the chat box, and we will address them accordingly.
Divyanshi, can I take a moment? I see Rohit here. Hi, Rohit. It's such a surprise to see you here and a
Yeah, I was
pleasure.
listening. I was listening to you, and it's a wonderful lecture which you gave, and you have
Thank you,
a
Rohit.
good hold on that subject. And I just wanted to say that we are also applying the Indian method of acting is also it comprises of these aspects, So we here at Amity School of Languages do uh, process it these concepts of yoga and other ideas, but not in through that system, but through acting. As students are involved in acting, they are practicing these idea, breathing exercises, music, rehearsal, doing it again and again to do it. So those are the things which they are practicing, but in theater. But yes, it's a very interesting thing and it's a very important thing, and we should owe to it, and we should bring it into our curriculum strongly so
Yes.
that student can get benefit of it.
Yes, Rohit. And Rohit, I'd love to maybe collaborate on how theater has some Indian philosophical thoughts under it. Abhyas and Vairagya is what you're talking about. I love that. That's a very beautiful point that you
Teasing
brought in.
motivation you're talking about, like in
Shraddha,
acting,
yeah.
actor needs to find the motivation, then
Yeah.
how body, mind, speech, voice, and spirit. So we need to work on spirit. So those are components. So it's all there in Natyashastra from where it's coming out.
Yes.
So yes, so Indian method of acting is about that. So yes, it is very interconnected with Indian philosophy.
Philosophical, yeah. Thank you for making that point, Rohit.
Thank you. Thank you. It's pleasure to see you again.
The pleasure is all mine, you know that. Yes, please, Divyanshi, go ahead. I'm sorry. I kind of made it. Yeah, please go ahead. So,
Participants may use the raise hand feature or type their questions in the chat box and we will address them accordingly.
if you even if you don't have questions, I would love interventions and I would love to learn from you people because we're all learners essentially. So yes, I learned a lot from Rohit's intervention that Natya Shastra and in fact theater has the same philosophical concepts in it and we can actually and you're at Amity actually applying them. Wonderful. And so if anybody who has their own area of expertise could kind of integrate it with peace studies, I would love to hear them out.
Ma'am, can I speak? This is Masarat Fatma, a PhD
Yes,
scholar
please,
from
please.
ASL.
Yes.
Ma'am, it was literally a very, very, heartening session for us because, like, as a school mentor, I have seen that there are a lot of times when we want that there should be some calmer mind, there should be some people who have, a clearer vision. And I hope the presentation that you have given, it has literally, I mean, it's going to be very, very applicable in terms of what should I say, pedagogical practices, because we have seen as a mentor when we go to schools, we see teachers, they have a lot of problems. So in from my perspective, it was very fruitful because I could see there were certain points where I could, I mean, it will be possible for me to, interact my teachers concerning those points where I feel that your PPT is going to be and your presentation and your lecture was literally very helpful. It was indeed a very learnful and very, I mean, a session full of learning for me.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot. Means a lot. If
Thank,
you take it away and you implement even 1% of it, my work's done. I would love
I,
that. Thank you.
ma'am, why not? And please, if we could get this PPT, that will be very helpful, ma'am.
Sure, ma'am. I have shared it with Dr. Soumya and she would share it with you people.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Recording it. So anybody, yes,
Yes, ma'am.
Disha ma'am, you're
we
on
have
mute.
lecture and the PPT must be there on the Zoom link and also on the YouTube, which we will plan to put up so that the word spread. Because right now, when times are changing and the world and the environment is under such a big process of change, and what makes us live ahead is, yeah, Vigyan, fine. But the Gyan has to be with the ultimate energy to bring you peace. And that comes with yoga and meditation. So I hope this takes a lot of our faculty to, you know, really motivate the students that in case they want to move ahead peacefully, gain employability, which is of course a need of the hour, but be at peace with themselves. It will help them a lot. So that was a wonderful, associating spiritualism with our act every day. Any act brings you so much peace if you yourself are in peace because your association and your faith and your meditation has made you so calm. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
There is a question from a PhD scholar.
Yes.
Her question is, her name is Shifa Mukhtar, and her question is, she's unable to mute herself. That is why I'm asking from on her behalf.
Okay.
Her
Okay.
question is, can selfless action as promoted by Mimasa still
Mhm.
find relevance in today's individualistic society?
You see, that's the whole point. Just because something's not current doesn't mean it's not contemporary. It doesn't mean it is not needed. The point you're making, I get that. Beta, it's a very, very valid point. How far can we be selfless? That's also a point, you know. Selfless action is something that I, in fact, myself don't use as a vocabulary, but I did to kind of explain Kamya Karan. It does mean action for others, right? So there's a huge difference between selfless action and action for others. I need to kind of reiterate that. But the whole point is, beta, that I do understand that it's a very individualistic, achievement driven world. But I always say this to my students, and always try to do this myself. Doesn't matter what the world and where the wave is going. I mean, if you're just that one person who can still stick to doing something that's against the odds, so to say, that's not what everybody is doing. I think it's as relevant and as important. So the whole point is that I don't think how much can it be implemented as much as we have the spirit to implement it. As much as we as individuals, we're here, I think we're 47 people here. Each one of us, only one action for others. Now, it could be any action. It doesn't mean you start giving donations all the time. Doesn't mean that somebody else has a, there's something. That's why I use the term balance. And you can only understand that discernment once you've reached that state of equanimity, that you enter in a toxic relationship. Oh, I'm giving. That's not what I mean here, right? So the whole point is that you take out time to do action for somebody else, even if it's just one action in a month. And doesn't matter if others aren't doing. I mean, does it ever affect? I'm here teaching in a college. You see the background. There's no light. As giving a lecture, there's no light. There's no electricity, no water. But that the whole point is I could have, अरे नहीं होगा मुझसे. So the point is, whatever you think is good, do that at least once for others. That's it. And when I say others, doesn't mean you kind of forget yourself. That's why I'm saying action for others, but not forgetting yourself. I hope I've answered your question, Beta.
I think she's not able to unmute herself. That is why she asked me to ask a
Okay,
question on
sorry.
her behalf. My question is that you talked about that if you are feeling sad, I mean, you
Yeah,
jump, you take deep breath,
yeah.
and then you'll be all fine. That is there. You have the scientific
Mm,
evidence. Everybody nowadays knows that.
mm,
Uh, the question is, like, and you also said that the world is our extension of ourselves.
mhm.
And when we see that, I mean that this is completely my point of view that I
Yeah.
see the world divided into two parts.
Mm.
I mean, there are good people, there are bad people, and you want to do good to good people only. How to
Okay.
overcome that feeling?
Why do you want to overcome? I think, if you ask me, that's a
Uh,
personal question if you ask me that ways. But if you want me to align with my topic, I will answer both, So first thing is, I always feel that if you're doing something, it should come from inside. The inside is very important for me and also for pedagogy. So if you see people as good and bad, that's because you've not listened to the story of the bad. When you listen to the story of the bad, you would realize there is a bit of good in them. And when you listen to the story of the good, you would also realize there's a bit of bad in them, right? So the whole point is this shades of gray, right? We're taught that at university all the time. And that is what gives me, instead of looking at who am I giving this to, I'm making it a very self-centered action, in the sense that I'm giving it for my happiness. You can think it that ways. Why do you want something in terms of exchange? That's what I do personally. So yeah, probably
so I don't want anything bad. I
this.
mean, in return.
Soumya,
So I
but it's
don't want
difficult.
anything bad. I mean, but it's difficult to do something good for people whom we think are not good, actually. And maybe if you're talking in terms of, there is a good in them, but we have not deciphered it. We do not know about it. But I think I think the percentage is very less, even if there
Yeah,
is good
that's
in them.
that's
And
true.
I really want to do something good for good people. I mean, I know everybody is not perfect. So there's going to be 80%, they are going to be good, 20%, they are going to be bad. So likewise, I mean, it's
Soumya,
not,
focus.
I don't want anything
Huh.
in return, but I want to do good for good people, then I feel good. Otherwise,
You
I
see,
don't feel
when you
good.
do good, you're doing it for good people. When you do good, when you choose to do good, it's actually automatically happening for good people. Think about it, what I just said. Because, uh, why am I saying that? Because you're perpetuating that goodness. So just because somebody is bad, you won't, I don't, obviously there comes Vivek in that. You have to kind of discern कौन सही है, कौन नहीं है. कृष्ण ने भी गीता एक पात्र को ही दी, सबको नहीं दी, है ना? तो वो important है to know who's the recipient. I'm not saying don't do that. That's very, very important. Very, very important. But doing good as in when you are detached to the results of your action would in itself perpetuate goodness. When you do good, you do it for good people, for sure. Because it's not
Okay.
you doing good, it's that idea of goodness that's spreading, that idea that's living. That's something that
And
I
then
call inspiration, change through inspiration. Slow but steady, probably.
I, okay,
Okay,
I think
so
I've got your point, and maybe we'll
yes,
connect later on for more
yes.
discussion.
Please do that.
Okay, so Disha and Divyanshi, please go ahead.
Thank you, ma'am, for this interactive session. As we draw this session to a close, we would like to express our heartfelt gratitude to our distinguished guest speaker, respected guests, and all the participants for making this program a grand success. A special thanks to Professor Dr. Kumkum Rik and Dr. Disha Sharma for their inspiring words and valuable insights. Your contribution have truly enriched our understanding and will surely have a lasting impact.
Before we conclude, we request all participants to kindly turn on their cameras for a virtual group photograph to commemorate this special occasion. We kindly request that you submit your valuable feedback using the form that will be shared in the WhatsApp group. Your input is greatly appreciated.
Thank you. We are excited to announce that for tomorrow's session, we will be joined by Dr. Kajal Srivastav, who will be speaking on the topic Enhancing Business Narratives and Personal Branding. It's going to be an insightful and enriching experience. Don't miss it. Looking forward to seeing you all there.
Thank you, everyone, for your enthusiastic participation. We wish you a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you so much. Hope to see you
Thank you,
again
ma'am.
and all the best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everybody, for listening me out. Divyanshi, Disha, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Soumya. Thank you, Dr. Rohit. And ma'am, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.